All right, looks like we are live. Good morning, everybody. It is 11 a.m. Panama time. We've got Ted Tennis checking in from Pedasí. Good morning, Ted.
Good morning, Kent. Good morning, everyone who's already on. Nice to be here.
Yeah, excellent. Well, and I'm checking in from El Cangrejo, from home, obviously, under quarantine. So we'll let everyone get started here in the room. We'll give folks a couple minutes to get online. It's always interesting to hear where folks are from. So, it would be fun to see you guys as you hop on to check in and say, hey, checking in from wherever you happen to be. Weather report here is 85 and sunny. A little bit of clouds in the sky. We're coming in on our rainy season, but the rains haven't started in earnest yet. Ted, how's the weather in Pedasí before we get started?
The weather's good, as always. It's the dry season. We're in about a month. The dry season starts in mid-December here, basically. So it hasn't rained since then. So we're definitely crispy, bone dry right now. But beautiful weather, sunny skies every day.
Fantastic. Hey, look at you guys. I love this. Folks checking in from different parts of the country or really the world. We've got Georgia, South Africa, Texas, California. Wow, fun. Well, once again, we appreciate you guys joining us. I think there's going to be quite a few people on the call today, so we'll just sort of make some small talk for another minute or two before we get started in the bulk of the presentation. Again, I'm Kent Davis, Managing Director of Panama Equity, along with Ted Tennis, who runs our Pedasí office. Ted's got a really cool backstory we can get into. Hey, let's do it now since folks are just checking in. And again, if you're just joining us, would love to hear where you're checking in from. Ted is originally a Michigander. Ted, you first came to Panama in the 90s, wasn't it?
My first trip down, and by the way, impressive use of the term Michigander, Kent. Kudos to you. I don't know where you heard that, but that's absolutely accurate. I am a Michigander from Lansing. We might have some Lansing folks on here at this point, if they're named Tennis, probably. And so, yeah, when I was at the University of Michigan studying in the early 90s, I met a guy who was from Panama, and I came down to visit. So that would have been 91 was my first trip, just a vacation, couple of weeks, cruising around the country, doing some sightseeing. And yeah, that's 30 years ago. It's amazing. It's been almost 30 years.
I can't even imagine. And, I've been here for 13 now. So yeah, things have changed a lot just in that time, and Ted's seen for twice as long. So anyway, one more minute. Boy, this is fantastic. We've got a lot of people from all over the world. It's really great that you guys are joining us. Plan on as long as you can stay. And we've got a few questions queued up to get the conversation started, but this is about you guys. This is to answer your questions. So you know what? Let's go ahead and get started. And once again, please use the chat function. Tell us where you're from, and any questions we don't get back to midstream, we will absolutely answer at the end. But that's the format today, is to just stop and start and share as much as we can from folks living the dream, as you could say. So yeah, let's get started here about Pedasí. So again, quick introduction. I'm Kent Davis, Managing Director of Panama Equity. We've got Ted Tennis, who runs our Pedasí office. Ted, you've been in Pedasí since when?
Living here full time since it's been 11 years. Yeah, right around 11 years ago, May or something like that of 09 is when I moved here. I've been coming here. So my Pedasí connection was through my friend who I met in university, and we're both into free dive spearfishing. So I was coming down here for years from Hawaii. When I lived still in Hawaii, I was coming here every year to go diving and fishing for a couple of weeks, and fell in love with the area. Really liked Pedasí for a lot of reasons we'll probably get into here in a minute. But so 11 years on the ground, full time in Pedasí.
And I tell you what, being based here in the city, there's nothing I look forward to more than get in that car and drive into Pedasí, because it's a beautiful drive. And when you get there, it's a whole nother world. So speaking of which, the first question is, is where's Pedasí and how do I get there?
Google it. Next question. No, I'm just I guess that's what we're here to talk about. So in all seriousness, a lot of the frequently asked questions that are going to come up today, we have already answered on our website, which I encourage after the presentation or anytime you have a chance to go on the website. You can type in Pedasí, or you can go to our locations tab. However you want to find Pedasí on the website. Once you click that, it opens up a landing page for Pedasí. Okay, that's going to give you access to our listings, of course. It's also going to give you access to a lot of other information, general information. There's a Pedasí living guide you can download for free. So I encourage anyone who's interested in Panama, in Pedasí, to check out the PanamaEquity.com website. Do a little plug right now.
Good man.
Because not just Pedasí, but other areas, we've developed these guides because, you know, doing this for 11 years, helping, I don't know how many hundreds of families at this point. I was thinking about it the other day, it might be over 300 at this point. Families and investors that I've helped to purchase down here. You know, everybody has the same questions. Everybody starts from the same place, which is zero knowledge, right? And then the questions get more and more in depth. So that's what I would encourage everybody to do as far as answering the specific question, which is how do you get to Pedasí and where is it? So Panama sort of counterintuitively goes west to east geographically. So it, you know, Central America kind of comes down and then it comes over to Colombia. So Costa Rica is our neighbor and Colombia is our neighbor. And we are an isthmus between North and South America. And people think, okay, well, Costa Rica is north of Panama then and Colombia is south. And that's kind of true. But if you really look at a map, you'll see that the thing flattens out around Panama. So with that being said, just to set the scene here, if you look at a map, the Caribbean Sea, right? The Caribbean is to the north. The Pacific is to the south when you're in Panama, which is kind of weird and counterintuitive. Costa Rica is to the west, and Colombia is to the east. That's how Panama sets up. So within that context, Panama City is sort of in the middle of the country on the Pacific side. And then Pedasí is about a 4-hour drive west, in other words, towards Costa Rica, from Panama City.
Okay, got it. So the logistics, let's say I'm coming in from a place like Florida or Europe, you know, I think Florida is going to be about a 4-hour flight. Texas Florida's probably 3 from Miami, right? 4 from Texas. And then Europe, depending on where you're coming in from, let's call it 10. There's hundreds of daily nonstop flights. So you land into Panama City, Ted, and if I recall, you've got a couple options, right? You can either drive there, and the drive is about how long, more or less?
From Panama City, once you cross the canal, once you get out of the city and you're on your way, which can take, you know, anywhere from 15 minutes to 15 hours, depending on what time you do that, Panama City. I won't get into it, but we all know the traffic in Panama City is not great. But once you get across the bridge, you're looking at a 4-hour drive. Okay,
got it. And is it, you know, on a highway? Do you have to make a lot of turns? Is it tricky, or is it, you know, what is it, scenic? Paint the picture for us.
Yeah, good question. So it is all on highways. It's all paved. It's all 4-lane until you get to Las Tablas, which is our provincial capital here in the province of Los Santos, where Pedasí is. Well, we're down the Azuero Peninsula here. So what you do is you basically head due west almost on the Pan American Highway. This is the highway that links Panama to Alaska, right? I mean, you can literally take this road system right up through all the Central American countries up into the United States. So you're on that for about 2.5 hours, and then you cut south into the Azuero Peninsula at a town called Divisa, and from there the road gets even better because that's brand new. So it's a 4-lane brand new highway that was just built or just improved, I should say, all the way down to Las Tablas, and then the last half an hour is on 2-lane, but also brand new, really good highway down to Pedasí. That's the last little jaunt's about a half an hour.
Cool. Yeah, no, that's a great description, Ted. Thank you. And I tell you what, one of my favorite things about Pedasí is the drive there. It's so beautiful. You're driving along the Pacific Ocean, as you can see in the slide we have here. you're crossing over a mountain chain around Coronado, or leading up to Coronado, I should say. And then once you get down to Divisa, which is where you're turning off the main highway and you go onto those secondary roads, it's beautiful. You're going through rolling hills, farmland, small towns, and it's cool. It's very navigable too. I mean, it's literally like 2 turns. You leave Panama City, you head due west, and when you see the sign for Divisa, you hang a left and you go all the way down that peninsula. So, okay, awesome. Thank you, Ted. So let's talk about Panama City. You kind of have 2 people in this world. Those that love the city and those that love to get out of the city as quickly as possible. And that's any city. So how often do you find yourself, or would one find themselves going to Panama City? Why would you be going there in the first place? Can you fill us in on that? We get that question a lot.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, ultimately, when you're exiting or entering the country right now, 99% of the time, most people are going to come in and out of Panama City. There's more flights. You can fly into David from some places. There's Canadian charters that go into Rio Hato, which is about halfway between the city and Pedasí. But for most people, it's still Panama City, and you're still coming into Tocumen International Airport. That's the PTY designation. So when you're coming and going from Panama, most likely you're going to the city. That would be, I would say, most of my city trips.
Only when you have to. I mean,
I mean, the reality is you don't have to for many other reasons. That's where the U.S. and Canadian and other embassies are. So if you have any kind of embassy paperwork you're doing, which I don't anymore, I've been here long enough to where I'm a legal resident for years and years and years. I don't really have much reason to go to those places.
So you're living in a small town, and there's some things that you don't have. However, it sounds like you don't have to drive 4 hours to get those things. So the closest sort of medium-sized town is going to be what, Ted, from Pedasí, where you're doing most of your town-related stuff. Is that going to be Las Tablas, or do you have to go all the way up to Chitre?
A little of both. It depends, right? Another good question. So to set the scene for folks that haven't been here, Pedasí is a town of about 3,000 or 4,000 people. So it's pretty small. We do have several supermarkets. They call them mini supers here, not like the huge big box stores, of course. But 95% of your daily, whatever you need, whether it be the hardware store, whether it be the grocery store, you can get here. Then there's Las Tablas, which, as I said earlier, is about a half an hour north back towards Panama City. And Las Tablas is about 10,000 people, but it's the provincial capital. That's where the notary is, the public registry office. A lot of what we do real estate-wise in terms of getting deals done, the final closing happens in Las Tablas because that's where the appropriate government entities are.
Okay.
Pedasí has 2 banks. Las Tablas might have 10.
Sorry to interrupt, Ted. Okay, so we've got Pedasí. I mean, you have your basics, and in fact, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but you've also got a lot of sort of specialty things for expats, whether that's services or products. But it sounds like you're definitely not isolated in terms of, hey, shoot up to a town, half an hour that's got 10, 20,000 people, and then keep going up to Chitre, which is, I think you said, did you say the population? Around 100,000?
50.
150?
No, 50,000.
Oh, 50. Golly, feels like more than that. Okay, cool. Good. So, I mean, adding a little color to the answer, I would say for people that maybe they're going to a big concert, like if a big band comes or they want to go high culture, whether that's the opera or theater, ballet, the circus for the kids, stuff like that, then you might come into Panama City, but 99% of the stuff you can get outside of the city. Okay, cool, good. So talk to us about the people that live in Pedasí, both the locals and the expats. What's it look like? You're at a grocery store or at a restaurant on the street. Who are you going to see? What's the deal?
Right. So good question. Okay, let's dive into that. And a lot of the chats here are talking about rentals and stuff, so we can maybe get into that.
Yeah, we're going to answer. I'm keeping an eye on these.
Good. Okay. So Okay. Demographically, Pedasí breaks down probably, like I said, 3,000 to 4,000 people, depending upon how wide of an area you measure in the Pedasí greater metropolitan district. We've got a couple of hundred expats that live here year round, probably another 100 or 200 that snowbird, come in and out. But primarily it's going to be Panamanians. The Panamanians that are here, the primary industry is agriculture. There's a lot of ranching, cattle ranching. People grow corn here. They grow rice here, some sorghum, but it's mostly ranching for cattle. You've also got fishing, artisanal fishing, guys of, go out and catch fish. Most of that fish gets exported out of the country, actually. So they send it right from here up to Panama City and out. And then there's charters. So demographically, you've got, I would say, 90% roughly local Panamanians. One of the big pluses, maybe the biggest in my mind for Pedasí, I mean, all of Panama tends to have great weather, right? All of Panama tends to be safe, and the dollar economy and the good infrastructure and these things that we talk about when we invite people to come check out Panama. But Pedasí specifically, really, what sets it apart in my mind, and the reason that I love it so much here, is you've got this integration between people like me who didn't grow up here and the people that did grow up here. And there's not this sort of us and them mentality like I've seen in other places. Kent, you and I both have long, family and personal ties to Hawaii. Hawaii's different, man. It's different. You get a vibe of sort of, if you're not from here, don't come here kind of vibe. You don't get that in Pedasí. I noticed it right from the beginning, the first trip down here probably 20 years ago. And that hasn't changed. And it's wonderful. So that's one thing that I would say that sets Pedasí apart. For example, not to bag on any other parts of the country, but you go to Coronado, and Coronado is really not a town per se, right? It doesn't really have one town center. You don't have this feeling of community. The people that are there tend to either sort of group amongst themselves if they're not from there originally, or what also happens there, because it's closer to Panama City, it's a weekend destination for people with some money who come out of the city for the weekend, people who have enough money to be able to afford, say, a beach house or a beach condo. So they'll come for the weekend, but then they leave, and you don't have this sense of community of people that know each other, that have spent a lot of time together. Whereas in Pedasí, I mean, not just me, because I've been here so long and I know practically everybody now, it seems like, but even people that come in for the first time, they get it right away. And on that note, one of the big things people ask me, and maybe this is going to come up, but let me just put an aside here. One of the biggest changes I've seen in the last few years to living here has been social media, WhatsApp and Facebook. Because when I first got here, there was really very little communication other than meeting people on the street or going to a bar or restaurant, or, sort of organic, personal, face-to-face meeting. There wasn't really a good way to get information, to get help when you needed it, to ask questions. Whereas now with the Pedasí WhatsApp community groups and the Facebook, the Pedasí post, for example, on Facebook, help and information is a click away, and people are super generous with their time and their knowledge, and it's great. And it's made living here, for me too, much more comfortable, much easier than it was before that access to technology. And it's probably true any place, and certainly small towns, but it's great. I mean, the WhatsApp group here, for example, the English language group, I would say 90% of the English speakers that live in this town are on that group. There's also the Spanish language group, and a lot of people that are, tech savvy enough are on that now too. And information just disseminates quickly, and it's a great resource.
Yeah, no, good answer. Very thorough as always. Appreciate it. What was I going to say? Let's stop and do some of these questions. We've got some more slides, and some of them we're going to get to. But let's quality internet. Bill, I was just going to mention that we have good internet in Pedasí. Finally. And it depends on how remote you go. I mean, if you're deep in the mountains towards that would be the west, then, you might not have as much coverage. But for the area that we handle, which is, let's call it a 50-kilometer radius of Pedasí, mostly to the south and slightly to the north, is great internet. So we've got quite a few people in the community I say we, Ted and his team down there have quite a few people that work from home, quite a few more now, given what's going on.
Sure.
But yeah, it hasn't missed a beat. And okay, so let me jam through these here. Nani, air conditioning. You're going to want air conditioning. It gets a little hot. You can get by with, we've got a few communities like, what's Gilad's community, Ted?
Costa Pedasí.
Costa Pedasí, Destiladeros, right on the water that gets a great breeze. So at night, depending on the orientation of your property, then you will be able to see the, hold on, Joe, hopefully other people can see these slides. Let me just make sure with my tech expert here. Okay, so yeah, looks like we're good on the slides. Sorry, Joe, I don't know what to tell you. Air conditioning. You might want to have air conditioning. Monthly power cost, probably around, let's call it $50 to $150, depending on how big your property is. Medical, dentist, and vision. Yes, you have medical. You've got some good hospitals there, both in town and out of town. The ones in town are new, and they're getting more equipped every day. Let's see here. Sorry, guys. Slides. Now we should have slides. All right. So let's see what else we can answer here. International lawyers in Pedasí. Absolutely. We can help you with some introductions. Best time to visit Pedasí we're going to get to. And I think those are the main questions. Quality healthcare we've talked about. Crime rate. Ted, talk to us briefly about the crime rate in Pedasí.
Okay. Let me back up a second, if you don't mind, Ken. I want to dig down a little bit deeper on healthcare. So Pedasí has a relatively new, it opened about 4 years ago now, 18-room hospital just on the outskirts of town, which is a big hospital for a small town. And it's not fully open as far as all the rooms. It does have 24-hour urgent care, though, which is great. So if something happens and you need immediate, assistance, you can typically get it. Like probably a lot of small town areas, the quality and availability of resources as far as healthcare goes tends to graduate upwards the bigger the town gets. So a lot of folks, it's like, okay, if you need something simple, you go to the Pedasí Hospital. It's the most convenient. If you need something a little bit more complex, let's say you want to get, x-rays, or you want to go and have something checked out, you might go to Las Tablas. There's a big hospital there. There's much bigger hospitals around Chi today. In fact, there's several, including a new oncology center. And then if you have real issues, you might go to Panama City. There's a Johns Hopkins affiliated hospital in Panama City that people go to, which is considered widely to be the best hospital in Panama and right on par with hospitals, top flight hospitals around the world. So there's sort of this scale of healthcare that's available.
Got it. Okay. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah, well, there's also an English-speaking doctor that makes house calls down here, and a lot of my friends take advantage of that. He'll come right to your house.
Cool.
And healthcare, for those that aren't familiar with socialized medicine, healthcare is really, really cheap here. Almost like unbelievably cheap if you're from the States. So people ask, what about, getting health insurance? I have health insurance. I think it's always a good idea, of course. But I know people that don't, because going to the doctor, jumping in an ambulance, or getting taken to the hospital in an ambulance, staying there a few days, it might cost you hundreds of dollars instead of thousands. So there's just a big mind reset you have to do when you're coming, especially from the United States, where everything is just so crazy expensive.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I'm paying, I think it's $80 to get my teeth cleaned. Very small co-pays, et cetera. So yeah, no, that's always been a big appeal for Panama, is the inexpensive Medicare available. And certainly in Pedasí you have it. And what you don't have, you can drive between a half an hour and 45 minutes north for everything.
Yeah, my dentist today, for example, is an hour away.
And exactly. So talk to us, Ted. What do folks do for fun? I mean, we get some people out there. I can't tell you how many times I've seen it. folks come out, they say, oh, I'm going to retire, and then they end up starting a business. But let's say you don't start a business. What,
right.
what do folks do for fun?
So when we're not all locked up in our homes like we are now, you're probably not going to come to an area like Pedasí unless you're into warm weather and the beach. And the beach, of course, could mean you just like walking on it, or it could mean you like fishing or diving or surfing or all these other water activities. So most people that come down here on one level or another, they're into the ocean. They're into like I am. They want to be in the ocean, on the ocean, near the ocean. That's part of the draw, and it's a big part of our daily lives here. I wish it was a bigger part of mine, but I'm working too hard. But that's someday. People also like to socialize here, right? So there's lots of cool bars and restaurants. There's an amazing variety, and maybe not the time to get into it too much, but there's a really surprising variety of restaurants and food and entertainment options like that. As you mentioned, you're not going to go see the opera in Pedasí anytime soon. But as far as going and seeing live music, going and hanging out with your buddies, there's a lot of that. There's more and more as the expat community grows, and every year there's more expats here, more native English speakers specifically is what I'm talking about, that maybe don't have the language skills yet to integrate 100% into the local community on a social level. They'll still do it. There's still all these festivals. We have 13 big festivals a year here. So there's always these weekends where people are in the streets and hanging out, and it's a lot of fun. But a lot of my friends down here, they do what people do everywhere. They get together and they'll have, there's a women's group that's pretty awesome. They go around and do pub crawls, once a month or so. And there's music bingo nights, and there's just all these different activities people set up. There's a gym in Pedasí, a really nice gym actually now that a friend of mine from Austria opened up last year, which is fantastic. Can't wait to start going back again. Called Pedasí. I'll get this wrong and they'll kill me. Pedasí Fitness Club, right, Bernard? So you work out, you go to the beach. It's an active outdoor lifestyle.
Absolutely. Cool. No, thank you. Let's see, what else can I fill in there? It goes back to the community as well. You get so many like-minded people that are moving to Pedasí. I mean, these are not people that really want to be in the city. These are definitely either outdoor people or quiet lifestyle people. I mean, outdoor also means sit on your balcony, tend to your garden, go chop some herbs and cook for 2 hours. It's that kind of pace too, which is nice. And I can't stress enough how Pedasí, more so than any other area I've been to in Panama, locals and foreigners are so connected. There's zero hostility isn't the right word, but just it's a wonderful community. It's blended and it's great. So, okay, talk to us about the weather, locals, crime, and conveniences. You've done a good job already on this, but the weather we've talked about, it's going to be dry up until, golly, really the next week, 2 weeks, maybe a month, depending on El Niño or La Niña, right? But we're already in April pretty much, Ted, so that's about when the rains start coming, no?
Yeah, the end of April, maybe early May. We've probably got another month and a half before it starts to rain. And when I say it doesn't rain, I mean literally most years it doesn't rain at all for like 5 months.
Same in the city. It's nuts. You wouldn't expect that, but some people love it, especially our snowbirds, who are down here come December and leave around April, which happens to be our summer. Go figure. So, okay, what have we not talked about on this slide? Crime and conveniences. Talk to me about crime.
Yeah, violent crime is almost unheard of down here. It's a small town. People pretty much have each other's backs. They look out for one another. You do have some theft that goes on. It's interesting. I've been here 11 years and it's very sporadic. You'll have like a period where there's homes being broken into. Always empty homes, people that aren't here. For them, well, not always, majority, right? No like violence going on, just people snatching and grabbing, going in, breaking a window or something, going in, taking somebody's TV. That happens. Not as much probably as some other places, but it does happen. That would be the crime that we have, is something like that. And violent crime, like I said, almost unheard of. I would imagine there's some husbands and wives getting slippers upside the head right now after being cooped up for weeks on end. But
little domestic violence, sure.
Domestic violence. We can joke about that, right?
No.
I'll shut up.
Yeah. So, okay, let's move on. So what are we looking at here? This is, it says Isla Iguana, no?
That is Isla Iguana, yeah. And that is Pedasí, believe it or not. So the beaches here tend not to be white sand like this, but the islands do. And this is a national treasure. It is a refuge, both marine and land. They've got frigate birds there, the eponymous iguana population. I know I've always wanted to throw that word into a conversation, first time ever. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spot. That's about a 20-minute boat ride from Pedasí. Those boats that you see in the water there are called pangas, and they wait for you on Arenal Beach here in Pedasí, and they'll take you out there for 70 or 80 bucks, wait for you and bring you back. That's not per person, that's for the boat for the day.
Love it.
Yeah.
So, Saturday morning, post-COVID or pre-COVID, it's like, hey, what do we want to do? Let's get some buddies. Let's get 7 people, picnic lunch, everybody throw in $10. You get your own private boat, shoot you out there, come back, right? That's, I could do that. You also got, these waters, guys, for those that didn't know, Panama, the word Panama actually means land of abundant fish. Ted, as he mentioned earlier, came to Pedasí and Panama in general because he's an avid, what's the word? Spear fisherman?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. In layman's terms, fishing is exceptional, which also means that you get really good quality seafood. Nice for quality of life here. Okay, cool. We're looking at some more nice pictures. This looks like it's in a gated community. Is that right?
Yep, that is one of our listings actually, in a gated community called Coast of Pedasí. Here in Pedasí, we've got 2 beachfront gated communities. They're called Andromeda Ocean Estates and Coast of Pedasí, and they're right next door to each other. And beautiful homes in both. Both have access to really nice beaches and are close to town, 5-minute drive into town.
So gated communities, what's that going to cost you in general? And we're going to get into the real estate part here shortly, just to touch on it since, we are real estate agents. What's the homeowners association on a 2-bedroom, 2-bath or 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,600 square foot single family home on a nice lot, maybe ocean view? What's that going to cost you a month?
Okay, so the dues are going to run you about 150 to $200 a month. That would be your association fees, depending upon the project. Yeah. And then you're going to, taxes here tend to be property taxes tend to be a lot lower. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but if anybody's interested, we have that information on our site, or they can ask, private message us. And other than that, everybody's responsible, of course, for paying their own utilities and taking care of their own yard and property.
Cool. All right. Excellent. What are we looking at here? This is a nice looking house.
That's Villa Ravenala, another one of our listings. That's down in Los Desfiladeros, which is a really beautiful part of town also. Not gated communities per se, but some of the nicest homes in the area are down there.
Looks like it. What's this place go for?
$795 list price. It's actually pretty cool. The French architect Gilles Saint Gilles built this place, designed and built it. It's got a main house that is this is actually the living room of the main house. Beautiful kitchen, 2 bedrooms in the main house, and then you see the pool there. Out behind the pool, that is a studio cottage, and then there's another duplex cottage. So 3 separate living dwellings on that particular property, and it's about 2 acres of land.
Nice.
Right,
little compound.
What's that?
Little compound.
Yeah. It'd be a good place to hide out the COVID zombie apocalypse.
Exactly. Ride it out. Cool. So talk to us a little bit about cost of living. I'm a dad with 2 kids. We eat for about 6 in my house, but it's because my boys are hungry. So how do groceries compare? I mean, you're from Michigan, you were in Hawaii before that, you've lived all over the world. Let's say people already know Panama City prices. Is it more expensive, less expensive for, let's talk about food, let's talk about going out to eat, what are you going to pay at a restaurant? Healthcare we've already touched on. Talk to us about that.
So, as far as buying food in stores, like in grocery stores and things, I would say it's fairly comparable. We have the same brands down here, the same chains, I should say, in our area as you do in Panama City. We have a Rita Smith in Chicote, for example, which is my favorite store. I got to tell you, if you compare it to the Myers Thrifty Acres in Lansing, it's more expensive. In other words, Myers is cheaper. This is a store for Midwesterners that you would know, but you can it's not that much cheaper. Some things are, some things aren't. But overall, I would say going shopping for food is not a significantly cheaper here than it is in some places. Hawaii would be an exception to that, of course, as you and I both know well. Hawaii is really expensive. But if you compare it to Michigan, where I'm from originally, I would say Panama is right about the same as far as that goes.
For groceries, got it. And then what about, I want to have just sort of a regular meal out, get a bottle of wine, split an appetizer, 2 entrees, maybe split a dessert at a nice, we could call it a white tablecloth place, but not super fine dining. What's that going to run me?
Well, that varies also, but probably $25 a head if you're splitting a bottle of wine, for example. The entrees might run you anywhere from 10 to 15, $18, maybe 10 to 18, let's call it, for an entree. And then depends on what wine you get, of course. But I would say eating out, compared to Panama City, I'm always shocked when I go to Panama City, how expensive some of the restaurants are.
Sure.
And here in Pedasí, it's going out to eat, going out to drink, is really economical in my opinion, compared to also compared to the States.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, what about fresh produce? You guys getting pineapple? You guys getting papaya? Maybe some organic produce coming in, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a pretty good selection, and it's gotten a lot better over the last 10, 11 years that I've been here. The selection of meats, the selection of cheeses, of produce, of greens, vegetables has gotten better. We're still not at the Myers Thrifty Acres. I'm going to keep plugging that place. I love it. Level, but it's gotten a lot better. And then you go up to Rita Smith, and you are paying a premium for some of these products. But then you can get almost anything that you can imagine at that store. And in Las Tablas, there's trucks that come down from the mountains of Chiriquí, for example, that are selling all sorts of vegetables out of the back of trucks. There's a farmer's market, Fresh Fridays, we call it, every Friday morning in the town, right out the town square, that people come and they get homemade salsas and hot sauces and breads and pies and meats.
Love it.
Yeah, that's cool. Expanding. That's expanding. It seems like regularly, where there's just more and more vendors selling more and more stuff.
Good. Okay. So in summary, in terms of costs, you've got certain things in Panama in general that are still very inexpensive, like medical care, right? Insurance. I would say the movies are cheap. You could go to a movie theater for $6. We're going to get to you, Tim, for sure, in terms of things to be thoughtful or wary of in Pedasí at the end. But so what else is cheaper? Let's see. Plumbers and things like that are much more inexpensive. Taxis, etc. So, okay, cool, good. Well, I think folks have gotten an idea about that. Property market, without going into too much detail, I can come down and I can get either a single family home that's built or in construction. I can get a piece of land that I can either farm or build on, or both. I think we've got some condo options available in Venao, which is about 40 minutes south of Pedasí, Ted?
Yep.
Cool. What have I missed in terms of property options? And can you give us a general sense? All right, I want to get a two bedroom, 2-bath home, maybe starting on the modest side, and then obviously we know a French compound on 2 acres with 6 bedrooms in a gated community is going to cost me $800,000. We've got and sold some beautiful properties. I mean, Ted sold some just estates, really interesting folks living in Pedasí that come from time to time. We've got some royalty, some European royalty that comes out there, some billionaires that come out there. But yeah, I assume we don't have any royalty or billionaires on the call. If you are, thanks for joining us. But yeah, Ted, just briefly, because we will talk about this in a whole nother presentation, but briefly, property market.
Right. Okay. I'll give you the sort of, high altitude sketch of what's going on down here. So when you look at a map of the area, you'll see that Pedasí is on the southeast corner of the Azuero Peninsula, and the town centers in a couple of kilometers off the beach area. So, you've also got. Sorry.
I'm scrolling the slide so people can see the map that I didn't display properly earlier.
Oh yeah, let's throw the map up. That'd be a good idea. That'd be a good for this.
Sorry.
That's okay. So you just mentioned also Playa Venao, which if you look at the inset, everybody on that map, you'll see Las Escobas de Venao. Nobody calls it that. I don't know where that came from, but that little bay that's sort of in the middle of the inset there, that's about, as Kent mentioned, a 30-40 minute drive southwest of Pedasí. And Playa Venao is a growing beach area. It's not really a town per se. It's more just a resort area. And there's a development down there called Blue that we promote that has really been popular for folks looking for a turnkey solution. These are typically folks, they're not going to live here full time. They might come down a month or two a year. A lot of surfers, because Venao is a really good surfing destination, year-round, good waves. And it's sort of one of these turnkey, all-in-one locations where you can have on-site property management and rental. It's a condo as opposed to a single-family home. So when all the infrastructure and stuff is maintained by other people, you don't have to worry about it. I know we have clients that are doing really well as far as renting down there, making really good returns. So as an investment property, it ticks a lot of boxes. To get in there, the barrier to entry is about $250,000. You're looking at getting a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, ground floor condo for about $250,000 right now. That's unfurnished, brand new, by the way. I mean, they're just building it. They've got 40 or so single family homes, pretty much all sold out at this point. We do have some resales. The developer is pretty much sold out of those. And then they're selling these condos, and the condo units are in towers that are only 4 stories high. So you got 7 units per building, 2, 2, 2, and a penthouse on top. The penthouses, I believe now, are all sold out. Those went for around $500,000, and the condo units that are all 2-bedroom, 2-bath, we're talking about roughly 1,000 square feet. Let's call them.
Sorry, let me just put things in context here. So we get a lot of clients that come down and they fall in love with Pedasí. Well, first you got to get to know Panama, and then you know Pedasí, and then you fall in love. But those are the folks that are not quite ready to spend full time down there, spend the whole year. So what a lot of people do is they gravitate towards condos because it's sort of lock it and leave it, right? It's also a nice rental income. You've got the same benefit with hold on just a second. Oye, chicos, por favor, estoy haciendo la presentación y se escucha perfectamente. Excuse me, working from home. Yeah, what? Dios. Yes. So you do have some options in terms of being able to purchase a property, rent it out, put it in a rental pool, make some income, cover your costs, and use it when you want to. And that is sort of the holy grail of buying overseas real estate. And you can absolutely do that both in Playa Venao with a couple condo options. We like Blue, among others. And in fact, in Pedasí, in single family homes, we have some great property management relationships with folks. So yeah, we've already been on here, Ted, for 45 minutes, and I want to address questions as they come up as well. What should I be asking about now, but I don't know enough about? Or what should I be asking but don't know about to ask? Okay, so mortgages, what's the story with mortgages? Can you get mortgages on property?
You can, yeah, and Ken, as far as timing goes, I just want to say I definitely I have some bread being delivered at noon tomorrow. So if we could make this finish this up in the next 24 hours.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all just pressing with things.
Yeah, I'm sure we're all sitting here. Anyway, all right.
Bachelor.
What?
Nothing. Anyway, yeah, I've got a house full of kids bubbling out of getting out of their rooms right now. No, but okay, so mortgages. I mean, at the end of the day, Ted, absolutely. You can get mortgages here. It's not easy. You're going to have residency, or at least a path, a proven path towards residency, i.e., hey, Mr. Bank, here I am. I'm trying to get my residency now. Here's my paperwork. You also get some options of owner financing, i.e., sellers who are interested in carrying the mortgage for 5 years, maybe up to 10 years. And Ted, I think we've even got some developers who might be open to developer financing, right?
Yeah. So let me just piggyback on what you said. That's correct. Some of the developers are willing to do short to midterm financing. There's very few developers out there saying, "Hey, I'll give you a 20-year mortgage, okay, and I'll carry it." There are some that are doing 2-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year. I know of one in particular. But so for folks that are coming from outside the country, which a lot of our clients do.
1 second, sorry. That's a nice dovetail, though, for when a developer is giving you a mortgage for 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. That shows to a bank you're creating your credit history now. And that's one of the biggest barriers to entry in terms of being able to get a mortgage. So it's sort of a segue product for you to get more of an institutional loan. But go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
No, yeah, that's exactly right. And it's considered mezzanine kind of bridge financing. It's to get people, to be able to get into a property, to take ownership, and then to go shop banks, go through the process. Panama is still a slow country to do business in. Things don't happen overnight. So, and a lot of folks coming in from abroad, what I like to say to my clients is, if you can get a bank loan in the States, you can probably also get one here. No U.S. bank is going to finance you to buy a foreign property asset. They don't want that on their books. So, with maybe some exceptions, if you have a remarkable history with a particular bank, and they'll do that for you. But I don't know of anyone that's done that down here. So you're talking about Panamanian banks, and they're good banks, and they're they can get it done, but it's not going to happen overnight. Pre-qualifying letters are kind of unheard of down here, really, at least in the Pedasí area, the banks down here. So, you've got to go get the property appraised. You got to do it with an appraiser that the bank already has a relationship with, a specific appraiser. You take that to the bank, you give them all your financials. They'll probably want you to open up a bank account, which is a whole other can of worms in the bank, which again, you can do, but it takes time. So because of the timing, really, because you have to go through all these hurdles, and it takes sometimes months to get to the point where a bank will offer you financing. Sellers are aware of this, and some private sellers and a lot of the developers are willing to step up and help you with that, and to get you over that hump so that you get 6 months or a year or something in order to work with the banks and to come in with some other type of financing. And another thing I would point out is if you don't already have credit history here, you do have to establish that, and that takes time also. So most banks, they're not going to go above 50% loan to value as far as your initial shot out of the gate. If you're going to finance a purchase here, whatever the appraised value is, most banks are going to loan you up to 50%.
Got it. Chris asked, pandemic aside, what's the best time to visit? I mean, is there a bad time to visit? Like, hurricane season? No, we don't have hurricanes in Panama. Cold weather? No. I mean, we're going to get some rain here in a little bit, but that's when the hills start looking like Tuscany, I mean, just like rolling green hills. It's beautiful. Is there a better time to visit, or, should people be thinking, what's the answer to that, Ted?
Yeah, I mean, there really isn't a right answer to that. I know people that prefer the rainy season down here, and rainy is a misnomer. Wet season is a misnomer. Pedasí is the driest part of the entire country. So, for example, we get about half the rainfall of the Caribbean side and some of the mountain areas. So even if you come down with October, November, which are the wettest months of the year when you look at historic rainfall patterns, it's still not that bad. It's still not raining every day. It doesn't rain all day. You're still going to get days with sun. If you're looking for blue skies and sunny weather, come down in the dry season. That's mid-December roughly through about mid-May. Personally, I don't love May. If I were to say what's Ted's least favorite time of year here, it would be the transition between the dry season and the wet season for a couple of reasons. You get the humidity rolling in, and yet everything's still kind of brown and burnt looking, right? Golden, the realtors, we might call that. And the bugs come out a little bit, right? You get these first hatchings where they're waiting for the rain too. And when they rain, you get these moth blooms, for example. And again, it only lasts for a week or two, and it's not like biblical per se. But if I were telling family or friends to come down, I would say, unless you have to, maybe try to avoid May.
Got it.
Even
May
if you,
or whenever the rainy season starts. I mean, if the rainy season starts, in a week, then hatch away. The moths won't have anybody to nibble on. Everybody will be at home. Okay.
Let me make that clear. We don't have flesh-devouring moths in Panama.
Yeah. Hey, coincidentally, that was our next slide. Best time to visit in Pedasí. Cool. There's Ted Tennis with is that a Wahoo? What is that on?
Oh, come on, Hawaiian. Come on, Hawaiian. Give me another guess, Kent.
I don't know.
That's a mahi-mahi.
Wow. That's one heck of a mahi. Cool.
Yeah. That's a direct film here. And that picture, by the way, for folks that don't know, that is a really cool event that has been happening now for 3 years, which is called Barro Fest. Barro is mud, and it looks like people are just dancing around in the mud, but what they're doing there is they're getting the mud prepared, and that little structure in the back is a framed house, and they're stuccoing the house with mud, and it's a traditional way. They call it quincha houses here, and there's a traditional way to get together as a community, sort of like the Amish back in the Midwest would build a barn together.
Barn raising,
right? It's kind of a Pedasi house raising, and it's a traditional thing. And they've combined that. Our current director of tourism for the country, actually, he and a couple of his colleagues started this event back before he was the director of tourism, Ivan. And it's just become one of the coolest things of the year. What it is hundreds of people go and they buy tickets. They go and do this. They build the house in the day. And then there's like a really good rock concert with like several bands, including bands from outside the country that come in at night. And it's a wonderful event called Barro Fest. I encourage everybody to come for Barro Fest. It's probably my favorite weekend of the year.
And that was what, about a month ago?
Yeah, it was about 2 months ago now. And
yeah, but you get these kind of festivals going on all year in different parts of the country. It's cool. If you keep an eye on them and you're into that sort of stuff, then yeah, it's doable. All right. Well, shoot. Okay. So this is where you guys can just fire off your questions. Is it possible to invest in property without having permanent residency? Absolutely, Steve. There is no restrictions. Foreigners have the same rights and privileges and protections as Panamanians when it comes to owning property, with very few exceptions. You can't own property within, I think it's 10 miles of a national border, an international or national border. But little things like that will not affect anything related to Pedasí or most of the properties that we sell. So yeah, no restrictions whatsoever. Only challenges you might have is if you need financing. And then the banks like to see that you're on the path to getting your residency, which is pretty easy. We could do a whole nother presentation on residencies, etc. Is there horseback riding in Pedasí? Absolutely. Ted owns a farm. He's a horseback rider for sure. You have that. How crazy is Carnival? As crazy as you want it to be, Jenny. Las Tablas is about an hour north. And that's the epicenter of craziness in Panama City. That's like, I haven't been there since I was married. Okay, rough construction cost per square foot for a, decent finish, granite countertops, nice kitchens and baths, etc. Single family home, land cost aside. What do you think, Ted? 800 a meter?
Yeah, I use 1,000 a meter, which is roughly $100 a foot. You can spend a lot more. You can spend a lot less. But as a ballpark for the kind of quality people are looking for these days, $100, $120 a foot is probably a good range.
Perfect. Closest hospital, Ralph, you've got a couple. You've got clinics and some specialists in Pedasí town. So right there. And then you've got up in Las Tablas, a nicer hospital that's brand new. Oh gosh, you can't hear me? I think that might be you, Osama. I hope it is. So yeah, closest hospital. And then again, Chitre, big hospitals, and worst case scenario, back to Panama City, which has exceptional care. But again, people really don't find themselves needing to go the 4 hours it takes to get to Panama City. Rentals, absolutely. We could reach out to you, Jenny. We've got some colleagues who handle the rental market. Is Pedasí pretty independent in terms of food, meat, and fish? Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got some nice local providers, as we've talked about. Understand it's windy. Please elaborate.
I can take that.
Windy sometimes. Ted?
Yeah,
windy?
Windy. So we don't have hurricanes here, so it's not going to get windy to blowing your house down levels. But in the dry season, we do have a northerly kind of trade wind, and it blows, anywhere from 5 to maybe 20 miles an hour most days. And it's just kind of nice. It actually, makes it feel a little cooler. Most people appreciate that. If you get up on top, especially, sometimes it gets a little windier. If you get up on top of hills or mountains in the area, it can get really windy sometimes, 30, 40 miles an hour gusts maybe. But overall, the only time that you might want to consider wind here as far as what you're building is when you're locating your pool. Most people put the pool on the south side of the house so that it's sheltered from the northerly breeze, because we have variable winds in the wet season, so half the year not much here and there, and it tends to blow from whatever point of the compass. In the dry season, it tends to be northerly, so we put our pools typically with some wind protection from the house.
That's an expert, you guys. That's why we love Ted. He's on it. Yeah, and Ted is, as you guys can see, a specialist. He has been in Panama he's been coming back and forth to Panama since the 90s. He's been installed in Pedasí for over a decade now. How wet is the wet season in Pedasí? Chris, good question. They get rain. What do you think, Ted? How can we answer that?
Well,
it's kind of like Hawaii, isn't it? Sorry to interrupt. I mean, it's like rains in the morning, clears up, rains in the night. You might get a couple days where it's kind of cloudy all day and like it wants to rain, it doesn't rain, but you don't get monsoon by any means.
Right. That's, especially, if you're not used to the tropics, the tropics, we don't have winter, summer. Clearly we have wet, dry. And so, and the wet season is called the winter here. And it's a little bit cooler, not much, because we're at 7 degree, latitude. But it does get wetter, but don't think, as Ken said, don't think monsoon. It doesn't rain every day. It doesn't rain all day. And you'll have a couple days, 3 days, 4 days where it doesn't rain. And then it might rain for 2 or 3 days. And then it might rain a few hours, every day for a while. It's a bit of a mix bag, but it's never, in my experience, at least living here for 11 years, it's really, really rare that you're going to get, for example, a week where it rains every day. It might happen, but it's not common.
Cool. Calm beaches, absolutely, Ralph. We got them. We got surf beaches. We got calm beaches. Snorkeling. Snorkeling, I think, just depends on the day, right? I mean, you don't have a whole lot of coral right close to Pedasí, but golly, at Isla Iguana, I mean, people drive across country to get to that snorkeling, so it's exceptional. Get to the city without a car. How much is it to get a taxi or a bus? Good question. So I got a guy that could take you to Pedasí for about $150. But then he's got to get home.
Well,
or you pay right.
Ken, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can maybe give context here. So you can take a bus to Las Tablas from Panama City. It costs about $9. And then from Las Tablas, it's a $1.25 to get to Pedasí. You got to change into a smaller bus. So that would be the most economical way to get from Panama City to Pedasí, would be to take two different buses. The big bus to Las Tablas for, like I said, $9-10, and then another buck. So $10 to get to Pedasí. That's your cheapest option. Selena Hotels runs a shuttle most days, where they're going to leave Panama City very early in the morning. They're going to get you to Pedasí or Playa Venao. They have hotels in both locations. And that shuttle, depending upon the day, my buddy Sam could jump in on this, but I believe it's $35 right now each way per person. And that'll take you direct. So you don't have to worry about buses. You just go to, if you're staying at the Selena Hotel, they'll pick you up there in Casco Viejo, Casco Antiguo in Panama City, and they'll take you right down here. A lot of our clients utilize that, even if they're not staying at the Selena, but they should. Selena's a good hotel. But even if they're not staying at the Selenas, you can jump on that shuttle and you just pay for it.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Let's see. Water shortage? No, there's no water shortage there. You're on the municipal system. However, most houses do have either catchment or storage. Want that? I mean, it's you're still you're not beholden to the rain, but it's always a good idea to have. So yeah, pitfalls. Thank you, Tim. We're definitely not trying to dodge your question. All right. So I think my wife would go crazy in Pedasí if she lived there full time, because we're both from the city. So you've got that as a challenge, but you'll have that in any small town. Other pitfalls. Let's see. If you don't like going to the ocean and you aren't extremely social and you find yourself easily bored, I guess you'd probably have that anywhere, maybe. I mean, you still got razor fast internet. You've still got a great community to bond with. So I'm reaching here. I'm trying to figure out pitfalls or what to be wary of. I mean, don't believe everything you read on the internet, obviously. You can't live in Pedasí on $500 a month very easily, unless you're living in your, like a RV. We have no house costs, right? What would be a comfortable level, Ted? What do you think is about a baseline, like $1,000 a month with like cell phone and groceries and going out to eat and like transportation and like, maybe an insurance payment on your car and health insurance and all of that? $1,000 a month? About cover yet?
Maybe on top of your housing expense, right?
Yeah, good way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you're paying in rent / mortgage / home ownership per month, add $1,000, and you could certainly live here on that per person. That being said, if you spend more, you have a better time.
Sure. Yeah. Fair.
I would say, and the pitfalls or the challenges here are going to be the same as any small town. You're not going to have access to the same amount of amenities and events and people that you would in a bigger city. So I've often said, and I really believe this, the bigger difference between, say, Pedasí and some place where you're from, whether it be Europe or the States, may not even be the language. It may not be the culture. It may not be the weather. The biggest difference might just be between big town or bigger city and a small town vibe. So if you're from a small town in one of these other places, you're probably going to find Pedasí very familiar. If you're from a big city, you're not. And the same way that if you went from, Detroit to a small town in Michigan, that's going to be a culture shock, and that's going to be a very different style of life. And as Ken said, you might find yourself getting bored. You might find yourself wondering, what am I going to do today? Or, boy, I wish I had a bigger social network. And that's kind of how it is. And that's getting better. There's more stuff to do here all the time. There's more people here all the time. But I would say if you're not into small towns, you're not probably going to fit the Pedasí lifestyle for very long.
Yeah, good. And then on language, I'll add a little bit. So I spoke Spanish when I came here. Most people don't have as much of a base as I had. However, having worked with a lot of expats, I've seen that particularly in Pedasí, but in Panama in general, which is awesome. but this is really exaggerated in Pedasí, is locals love when you try to stumble through your Spanish, and they also love trying to practice their English. It is a non-issue. There is zero judgment. In fact, people tend to light up at the opportunity to, engage. So you're not going to be limited by not speaking Spanish, but it is always a good idea. You will be more actuated, more in tune if you do get some really basic Spanish, but it's not a barrier, I would say. Clinton, man, I mean, I don't know if folks want to hear the detailed answer to that, but long-term investment, man, I would say Pedasí is definitely more primed to grow than Coronado in terms of just geography, space to grow towards. Another interesting thing is, and I'll get into this, Clinton, then it sounds like folks are keen on the answer. So, being a small country, we've got 4.5 million people, government initiatives move the needle. In other words, when you get new infrastructure, when you get a new road, a new bridge, a new hospital to your town, it makes it more livable. And Pedasí has been chosen by this $100 million, it's not a grant, it's a loan we got from the World Bank to help with our tourism, that the money is literally getting deployed in the next, it was like they announced it, like the deployment right before COVID. So we're kind of on the cusp here. It took us a year to get the loan approved. Now we got the loan, now we got the money, now it's time to spend the money. And Pedasí, amongst 3 other places, Bocas, Santa Catalina, Pedasí, and I want to say it's either Taboga or Santa Fe or Boquete, sort of a more, third tier city, or that's not a good way to say it, just a smaller market. But Pedasí is earmarked to get a nice chunk of that money, and they're going to be doing some really cool things that are going to be making it more livable. They're talking about doing a boardwalk on the beach. They're talking about doing some infrastructure by the water that's going to make it interesting. And that in a 20-year play, Clinton, is really interesting versus Coronado, which is, kind of white bread. It's people go there on the weekend. People live there year round. But it's not a town. It's a network of towns. It's small towns. You've got Coronado, Gorgona, Buenaventura, San Carlos. It's a strip. It's the Gold Coast. It's, a 20-mile stretch along the water in and around Coronado, versus Pedasí is like the epicenter of sort of culture in that area. So it's a town. So yeah, I like Pedasí for that reason. Chris, you joined late. Yeah, of course we've got an office in Pedasí. Ted Tennis runs it, along with his colleague Jonathan Clay, Veronica Correa. So that's a 3-person operation. And, we closed 40 deals last year in Pedasí. So there's definitely interest. As Ted mentioned earlier, you've got about 400 expats, not to mention local Panamanians that come and go. They keep a weekend place there. They come for a week or 2 at a time during the summer when the schools are out. Chris, you can definitely keep a boat. We've got sort of a what would you call that, Ted? A slip down by Arenal. What is that? What's the technical word?
Ramp. So there's, yeah.
That.
It's Hawaiian guy. The ramp to go after your wahoo. So yeah. Giving you crap. So yeah, fishing here is pretty much small boat fishing. We don't have a marina yet, and it's unlikely we're going to get one anytime soon. We have 14, 15-foot tide changes here. Really tough to put a marina in. You need a lot of investment, and it's arguably it just wouldn't be worth it as far as a business idea. But what people do have here is, you can trailer your boat down to several different ramps and launch it and go in and out from the ramps. There's one in Cañas. There's one in El Cervuelo. There's one here in Pedasí. It's tide specific in Pedasí because it goes out of the river. So you need to have the higher tide to get over the sandbar. Excuse me. But the flip side of that for fishermen anyway is that all the fishing is right here. close to shore. So you rarely have to go more than a few miles offshore to get into the main fishing action. And we get all the different species people are looking for, from tuna to billfish to wahoo and dorado and all the
whale season. Whale season is incredible. Whale season is incredible. You know, going back to that slide at the beginning, Pedasí is a peninsula. It's on the Azuero Peninsula, and it's kind of sticking out. So you get an incredible ocean migration from north to south. Literally, I mean, some of these fish are going thousands of miles. So it's on the marine migration route, which means you get a tremendous variety of sea life, including awesome fishing. So yeah, a lot of people have boats, Christopher, and yeah, it's not hard to get them in and out of the water. We've been on this for an hour. Ted's got a bread delivery in, 23 hours from now. So he's got time. I've got to feed my fam here, so I might sign off. But no, I mean, guys, this has been great. I really appreciate everyone hopping on. We had almost 100 people on, which is cool. It's like 67. So any other questions? I mean, we'll stick around. We like answering questions, and come visit. I mean, this is a teaser. This is to answer some of your questions, but we're going to do another full-blown webinar with a lot more pictures and videos and, the nuts and bolts of property and all that stuff. This is just more to get a flavor of what's going on in Pedasí. To see an expert in Ted Tennis, trying to curate. Ted, thank you. Or Chris, you're great, Chris. Yeah, mention the website. It's panamaequity.com. panamaequity.com. Click on Pedasí. We've got some fantastic resources, as Ted mentioned, including guides on all things Pedasí. What can you do there? What are costs of living? A lot of this stuff we answered already, but there's bound to be some new information in there, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. Jenny, you can have a golf cart, but you'll probably get run over by a semi-truck. Yeah, people, it's not a golf cart kind of, commute. People have cars and motorcycles and horses. So yeah, thank you, Matthew Marks in our city office. Good man. Bobby, thanks for joining. Everybody, thank you guys. This is it's fun to be able to connect with folks. So, we could wait another minute or two for any questions to come in.
I posted my email there. Also, it's my name has 2 D's, so it's just Ted with 2 D's at panamaequity.com. If anybody wants to send me an email with more questions, happy to answer as they come.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. And stay tuned. We will be uploading the webinar. Give us a couple days to do that. So early next week, you'll have it. And you know how to reach us. We're always available. Now more so than ever. No, we know how to do this. So we are around if you need us. Public transportation, you got taxis. You got Uber? You don't have Uber down there yet, do you, Ted?
No, there's no Uber yet, but there's taxis. There's little like 15-passenger van. We call them busitos, like little buses that can take you pretty much anywhere you need to go. And that Salina shuttle does go back and forth pretty much daily. So if you need, if you don't have a car and you want to go back to the city, you can just make a reservation for that.
Right on. Okay, cool. Well, wonderful, folks. You guys take care. Stay indoors. Let's flatten the curve, and we will see you hopefully see you down here. Come visit. It's a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a visit will leave you speechless. How about that? Take care, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Be safe.